Science of the Southland, episode 209. Today is March 3. We've gotten past Leap Day. I'm Jack Purdy. Jake Grant is here. Akshay is out at the Sloan Analytics Conference, so he is having
Oh wow.
probably he is in Candyland for Akshay, if there was ever a thing. And to fill in the boat, we had to go to our reliable arm in the bullpen, Ken Sugiura, from the AJC. Ken most recently put an article out about Josh Pastner, who is a guy I've been thinking about, honestly, because that guy was of my favorites of the people that I talked to and covered at Tech. So, Ken, thanks for showing up. Glad you're here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always good to hang out with you guys.
Let's start with that article. So you got to sit down with Josh recently. I read the article.
hmm
It was really good to see how he's doing. He's been doing TV. He just broadcast a game at Arizona, his alma mater. So I
Yep.
imagine that was a huge deal for him. I guess to start, what was the impetus to talk to him? Was that just a let's just see how you're doing kind of thing? And what were the big things you drew from that?
Yeah, so basically that was it. Like I think it's always interesting to chase down coaches after they've left for whatever reason and like how's life going, and that kind of thing. And we'd had some, back and forth trying to get in touch, and so we spoke, this past week. I'll summarize the article for those who haven't read it. He seems like he's doing really well. He's doing a lot of TV, and he's much healthier. And that was probably the biggest takeaway. Maybe is that he feels like he's in he is in much better health. I'll take his word for it. That he's the stress of being a power conference basketball coach was pretty heavy on him, and he was probably a little heavier than he wanted to be, and so he he started taking a spinning class, which I find endlessly.
I did not expect the first third of that article to be a lot about spin classes.
Yeah, it's a good way to kind of tell the story of where he is. Yeah, he was doing this 7 times a week at one point and twice a day. Some days, and kind of typical Josh Pastner. If he goes in on something, he goes in, both feet. And
Yep.
So yeah, he's a much better place emotionally, mentally, physically, and is enjoying the TV and is now will be in a few weeks again in the position where potentially he could kind of get back in the game as a coach.
Yeah.
It obviously depends on what sort of opportunities are available, and he'll have to weigh that against, do I want to be a coach that badly? Do I like TV enough? Are there enough TV opportunities for me to keep doing this? So,
right.
That's it in a nutshell.
And he's still based in Atlanta, right? They haven't moved. His family
Right.
hasn't moved out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same house in Chestnut Park.
Okay, cool. So he's still around. That's cool. Was there anything big from how he views Tech right now? Has that been like a priority? I know you talked a little bit about this in the article, but for those who didn't listen, what's his relationship with the school now? Is there one? How does that all fared so far in the last year?
It's interesting. He said he spoke with Damon Stoudemire, who he considers a close friend. They had actually worked together when Josh was at Memphis, and he hired him not just once but twice after Damon went to be an assistant at Arizona for a short spell. He said he talked to him before Damon took the job, and I gather it was maybe some kind of a scouting mission maybe on Damon's part. I'm not entirely sure, but he said interesting, like they haven't talked since. And I think it was, what Josh basically said was, I just kind of need some separation, which I can understand.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like I'm guessing he's spoken with, different people from Tech, but not. I'm guessing not Jay Bat or Damon certainly, and not in an official capacity. And I asked him like, could you? Would you have wanted to or been willing to cover a Tech game or call a Tech game? And he said, he said, well, interesting. He was very honest with him. He said, I sure I could have, but he said, well, no one asked me specifically that, so I don't know what I would have said at the moment.
Right. Yeah.
But I think he has a lot of good feeling for the school. I mean, obviously, he was there 7 years. Just the way he talked about Tech while he was coaching, his fondness for the school was very obvious.
Yeah.
And I think too, like it was, he spoke very. And I didn't include this, very, what's the word? Fondly, I guess, of Todd Stansbury and Bud Peterson. If you'll remember when he was going through his stuff where he was getting accused of some pretty awful things, and it would have been very easy for Tech to say, it's not worth the PR hit, even if we think he's innocent, we're just going to cut him loose and say, we want to go in a different direction. But they stood by him very very solidly through some pretty hard times. And I think that also has kind of developed, I'm sure, a loyalty that he has towards Tech. who knows what kind of the future will hold as far as when he comes back and that kind of thing. But I think
Yeah,
certainly he has no bitterness and a lot of good feeling for Tech.
that's awesome. I know
Yeah.
I've told you the same at times, and I've told people at Tech before. It's like there was very few people I considered a bigger cheerleader of Tech than
Mhm.
Josh when he was at Tech. Like
Oh yeah.
for especially for a guy who wasn't a Tech grad. Like we have a lot of
Right.
Tech grad coaches right now on campus for people that at least has been around a bunch.
Mhm.
And for the number of folks that didn't, he was of the top that like got it. That like he understood what it was, that there was a whole life happening outside of basketball for his guys, because it was
Right.
no easy cookie to get through Tech, just normally, and then
Yeah.
add in you're good playing basically semi-professional sports on top of it, or in some cases professional when you played some of those teams. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So I've always wanted him to kind of somehow stay relevant to Tech because he just was so good at that. But I'm glad to hear he's doing great.
Yeah.
Any pastor thoughts, Jake, before we move on?
I mean, I thought it was very fitting to see him calling the Arizona game yesterday. I know that I'd seen him on studio shows and things like that, but to see him out there on senior day in Tucson was pretty neat and timely considering, the article had just come out a couple days prior, but appreciated the insight because I too have some nice fuzzy feelings. I came up on college basketball as my first sport, son of a Indiana grad and a Bradley Braves basketball grad.
Wow.
So that's a lot of Midwest hooping
And
in there. But
That is.
the Jake appreciation of Georgia Tech is closely tied to his first men's basketball team that made that NIT run. So
yeah.
there'll always be a soft spot, and to hear that he's
Yeah.
healthy and enjoying life and all that stuff, that you can't go wrong with that. So.
Yeah.
Ken, as I recall, you were at the game
I
yesterday.
was. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's stick with
Uh-huh.
it. You two were there. I was not. I was at softball because I am addicted to the number of home runs they hit. Also, I forgot to get myself a media pass for this game. The real reason why I wasn't there. But we had senior day for Kyle Sturdivant and the other seniors of the team. I'll let y'all take the floor on this because I didn't really watch much of this game. We won. That's what I know. I know it was kind of crazy at times. But
Yes.
yeah, it just hit me with what happened yesterday. That was the only game last week, so that's all we got to talk about on the men's team.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake,
So
and
I was going to say, I want to keep me honest about asking one thing at the very end because I think it goes and makes more sense at the end. But Ken, I cannot remember what your question was in the presser, and I meant to re-listen to it because I was doing yard work this afternoon. But I was going to say, I want to ask him what made him ask that question because I was thinking the same thing. So to frame this
Okay.
all,
Yeah.
a
Go
lot
ahead.
of thoughts went through my head during this basketball game, including times where I was like, this is going really swimmingly to the point where it seems like it's the most complete basketball game we've seen from Georgia Tech outside of the Duke UNC. I don't want to call them aberrations, but those are really great teams against really good teams. This was a very complete Tech win in a way that it was 85-76, but Ken, correct me if I'm wrong here. It felt like it was pretty comfortable most of that second half. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. I mean, it was probably, I don't know exactly the kind of the rhythm of it, but probably by the middle of it, yeah, you're like, this is a game that Tech is, unless things completely fall apart, Tech's going to win. And certainly in
Yeah.
the last 5-6 minutes. And also, yeah, no, like this, it was the biggest. It was Tech's largest margin of victory for an ACC game. Not that there've been a ton of them, but regardless, like
Yeah.
they haven't had many wins like this where
Yeah.
they were in control and we're gonna win 4 or 5 minutes out. But to
Yeah.
answer your question, if you want to know the answer, so
Yeah.
midway through the first half, there was a possession where Nate George had the ball and was kind of dribbling around the perimeter.
Yes. Oh,
He must have had the ball for, I don't want to overestimate, but probably a good 15, 20 seconds where he was literally just kind of
yeah.
dribbling around and like he was kind of sort of probing, but you thinking, okay, probably time to pass, Nate. But then finally he got to the corner and sort of drove and faked a pass and passed to Miles Kelly, who made a three from the corner. So it all is well that ends well. But I asked Damon Stoudemire after the game, what were, as a, obviously he was a point guard and he's a coach. And
Yeah.
I can see where some coaches would be like, tearing their hair out, like pass the ball already. And some coaches would be like, you know what, I trust Nate and, he'll make the
Yeah.
right decision. and I was wondering like maybe, Stoudemire and he have some kind of point guard vibes where he says, just do what you do. But so I said like, I was kind of curious because I wasn't writing anything specifically off the game. I was curious for his thinking. And I said, so what was going through your mind when that happened? And it's funny. He said like, yeah, he was thinking like, yeah, pass the ball, like, and he can say, and it's funny. He used a phrase that if you've been to a Josh Master press conference, you probably heard. He said like, yeah, an old coach of mine used to say you're giving the ball a headache, which is something that Josh Master says all the time. And so it's funny, like if you heard it, you heard me laughing because I'm guessing they both got it from Luke Olson, who they both played for at Arizona. But yeah, so he was basically saying like, yeah, he probably should have passed the ball earlier, but it all worked out in the end. But yeah, so it was interesting observation. And then he kind of went on to, I think it was an answer. He went on to say like, how he's made a lot of progress and is certainly in a much better, different place than he is now than he was at the beginning of the year. But yeah, Nate's a really interesting, player. Obviously, given, he should be in high school right now and was barely recruited, and now looks like a guy that can be a really good piece for Tech going forward.
Yeah, and I remember as I was hearing the, grinding the tape, if you will, listening to the press conference, it seemed like that, coupled with a couple other points that you guys really honed in on, was almost like an emblematic way to summarize the game of, Nate's getting caught on that really close to the timeline. Very good example of press from Florida State, which they basically held the entire game. Like they were not getting Tech any air, I guess, when you're thinking about getting the ball and getting it down.
Yeah.
And David even commented on this, like 16 turnovers from Tech. A bunch of those were just forced to make a pass. And it's something that Tech, having watched the first game against Florida State on the road, it's one that going in, okay, Florida State's long and lanky, and they're athletic. And Tech really turned it around in this game. Like they had better success in the second half of the first game that they played the first time around. But it seemed that honestly the length didn't really bother them all that much. They had 55 rebounds. Like that's a gaudy stat even against a short team. Like Florida State's big. They make you earn that. And the fact that they were finding some success in the lane, a couple. I encourage anyone who's listening to this, if you did not watch this game, just go look at the Instagram, Twitter cuts of some of these highlights that they've been doing. There were gaudy dunks and finishes in the middle that I don't think that Tech has seen kind of that consistency. And I mean, they put up 85 points. Like it was a pretty, not a flawless game, but certainly a solid one.
Yeah. I would say like it was interesting. It seemed like particularly in the first half, maybe in the first half of the first half, they were Tech was they had a lot of they were throwing passes that were getting deflected a lot, which I think is probably at least to some degree due to them not being used to Florida State's length and maybe just not being completely ready to play in general. But that kind of just subsided, I think, to me as the game went on. And yeah, the rebounds. Mike Stamus, who's the SID for basketball, he said that it's the second most rebounds that Tech has had, I think, in an ACC game, which is crazy. And particularly considering the opposition, and also considering that they played a lot of overtime and number of overtime games where you would have thought you might surpass that. But yeah, so to go back to Josh Master, rebounding is so much a function of effort, and that and to that, so that speaks well of what Tech did yesterday for sure.
Yeah, totally jives with what we were seeing in the cheap seats of the Thriller Dome yesterday too. A couple other stats that I do want to point out. Tech had several finish in double figures by Ndongo, Nate George, and Kyle Sturdivant. Among those, it was Kyle Sturdivant and oh my gosh, Carter Murphy, and who's the third senior day, Jack or Ken?
Ty Claude, right?
Ty Claude, that's who it was. It's like, I know there are three. I don't want to forget to say it. It is senior day. Ty Claude did have 8 and 10 rebounds there too. Kapari and Ndongo each had double-digit rebounds as well. One thing that I thought played at least some role down the stretch, Tech was in the bonus and therefore the double bonus pretty early in the second half. This is a team that we've seen, I won't say foul a lot, but certainly have had their games where they're sending the other team to the line a lot, and to against a lanky physical team, to draw those fouls, I think really put them in a position of success as well. All in all, about as well as I think we could have hoped for them to close the game there, and or close the home slate, I should say there. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like this men's basketball team, no matter who's coaching, seems to trend up in March and February every year. And we literally did a deep dive into the data like a month and a half ago about how it's kind of true, but not that true. But I don't know. At least the last couple of years. Last year, another example.
Right.
The James Banks 2020 year
Right.
where they finished the year with a win at Clemson. It's like, dang, that team could have been maybe something interesting in the NIT or something like that. But then
Yeah.
the world ended, and there was no postseason anyways. But I don't know. It seems like this team's playing at least its most consistent ball pretty late here.
That's good to see. We kind of need it. I'll note. I was looking at the standings. We are not last anymore. We're both us and Miami are 6-12. Us, Miami, and Boston College are all 6-12. So we could climb as high as what 14, 13, 12th, or even to 11th because Notre Dame's only 7-11. So there's some wiggle room within the first day, but I believe we're locked into that first day of ACC play, tournament play once we get there in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So would be nice. We're playing one of these teams. We should be able to beat any of these teams, honestly. If we play Notre Dame, I'm scared because that's guaranteed to be a 92-90 game, and we don't know who's going to be the 92 team in that regard. So, their next games they played both on the road. That was the home finale. On the road at Wake Forest, it'll be 9 p.m. on Tuesday, and then Saturday they go to Virginia at 8 p.m. Wake Forest right now is 10-8 in the conference. Virginia is 12-7 in the conference. So those will be hard, and winning on the road in the ACC is also quite hard. We've only done it twice. So that said, we beat Clemson on the road. So if they're good, you never know what's going on. I'll quickly shift to the women here. They had only one game this week. They beat Miami in overtime, which, according to our radio guy Kurt Hoyt, was the first time Tech women have won on the road in overtime since 2009. They had a chance earlier this season against NC State. They just barely didn't pull out. A lot of the things you guys said about the men's team kind of applies here. Like they've had some physicality issues. Like they'd be really good for a quarter, and then it didn't matter what quarter it was, they'd like allow like a 15-2 run or a 16-0 run, and then the game would just be over, and it wouldn't matter what happened the rest of the way. This game was never more than a 5-point lead in either direction, but they held Miami real close the whole time, and only let them score 4 points, 6 points. What was it? It was like 4 points in the last 6 minutes when you include overtime. So they did a lot of really good work on the interior. They had a 12-2 offensive rebounding advantage in the first half, at one point in the first half. And so they were just from beginning to end had a all around performance that we hadn't seen basically from them all season. It's against a good team, or against at least a normal team that wasn't an out of conference team. Tony Morgan had 16 points. Caleb Blackshear had 18. So that was really good to see. Cheyenne Day Wilson for Miami had 21 in the first half and then only 6 in the second half. So I think that points a lot to just their ability to adapt. They were double teaming her in the second half and did a lot of good work there. They are going to finish. That was their last game of the season, regular season. They were 16-14, 3 more wins than last year. All of them coming in the ACC. So they went from 4-14 in the ACC to 7-11 in the ACC this year. They pretty much beat everyone they should have beat and lost to everyone they should have lost to. There's that didn't really wiggle that far out of it. And then also, according to Kurt, they're supposed to play Pitt on Wednesday afternoon in the first round of the tournament as the 10 seed. So, Jake, I don't know. I didn't see this game at all, but at least any lingering thoughts on the women's team as they go into ACC play?
Yeah, it can basically be summed up as this, and we've kind of keyed in on this at various points throughout the year. This team has beat just about every team you expect them to beat, but they really haven't done anything to move the needle above that. They're currently 74th in the net. That's probably WNIT. Maybe they have some sort of run there, but I believe you have to finish 500 or above. So being 15-14 is probably good for that. I'm kind of talking out of the side of my neck on the 500 for the NIT. But I don't know that my brain would just make that up out of nothing.
Well,
like I said,
yeah, at the very least,
Go for it.
they're gonna finish over 500 no matter what here, which is good to see.
Over 500.
Well, yeah, they're 2 games.
Oh, they
over
are
five.
16 and 14.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
16
I
and
thought
14.
we were 15 and
So yeah,
14. I don't know why I thought that.
they're 2 games over unless they could they could finish 500, I guess, if they lose first round and then get an WNIT and lose first round there. But
Yeah.
I'm not wishing that on any of us. So
Yeah, like
Also, it was Nell Fortner's birthday, and this was the most Fortner ball I saw them play all year between defensive effort and just tough buckets in the paint. So that was good to see for her birthday. And then they play Wednesday. All right, we moved trivia up in the schedule to make sure Ken had it. Jake, I requested a Michigan question for Ken here. I don't know how much interaction Tech and Michigan have had ever in anything. I was looking at some student data for work recently, and there's a lot of Michigan kids that don't come to Tech because they have Michigan in their backyard, as I've realized, and makes sense. So, Jake, what do we have here?
because you so generously put it out there that you have no idea how many times we played Michigan, just get her a guess. Just a guess. How many times do you think we played Michigan across? And the data set for the uninitiated is football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, and men's and women's tennis. So your classic match play type sports.
Man.
Well, they did women's tennis. They played up there this season. I don't know if I forgot if they played. Did they actually play Michigan in that tournament?
Oh, the data in this is refreshed every summer, so that wouldn't be in there. And I don't know that counts as a full matchup. They have played in Michigan recently, though. I will give you that.
Okay. Oh,
I know they played the men in men's basketball in a Big Ten and Big Ten ACC matchup.
Okay.
I kind of remember they played when Kremens was there, like in a preseason game, like a preseason NIT game or something. I think. But gosh, I'm gonna say I don't think I've ever played in football. I'm gonna say 10.
Oh, that was where I was about to land too.
And I have no idea if I could be closer, like way off. But...
I feel like I have to bank on how old both of these schools are as my advantage here. I'm gonna go for like 25, just because I wouldn't be surprised if like softball just happens to have like 2 different series against them or something like that. Yeah, that's
true. Yeah.
You guys are remarkably close to the win and loss record. Tech all time is 9 and 24. So weird parallel there. 9 and 24 in 33 official games. That is a 278 win percentage for the Jackets. Of note, women's basketball is 0-2 all time. The only reason I say that's of note is because I believe one of those games, I watched it all. I just can't remember how many overtimes it went to. It had to have been at least 3 or 4. It was in the WNIT in 2017.
Oh, right. I was like in a final, like they played in Detroit.
Yeah,
I remember that now. Yeah.
They played, I think, Detroit Mercy or something like that.
Yeah.
But that was a long game. I think it was like 4 hours of basketball. It was,
oh my goodness.
It was brutal. And of course, because it was a Michelle Joseph's team, the final score was like not as many as it would normally be in any other coaching situation there. Of note, Georgia Tech has a winning record in just one sport. Do you guys want to gander a guess?
Women's tennis.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Nope. That's 2-2 for an even 500.
Crap.
I know I'm the worst. It's men's basketball 4-3 all time. I figured we'd note that simply because those Bobby Cremens years, they did only win one, but outside of those 4 Bobby Cremens matchups, Georgia Tech is undefeated against that. So I guess maybe that's a Bobby Cremens thing, but who's to say? Their matchups of note, they have played once in football. I did write a column about that years and years ago. Too much detail to go into now. A rare trip to the north for Georgia Tech. They're rounding us out.
Was Gerald Ford there then?
Yep, Gerald Ford. There was some,
and there was a racial component.
Racial components to it. Whatever I wrote in the column was much better than I could do on the fly here on the air. But I encourage people to read that. Of note, softball is 0-5, volleyball is 0-4. And football is 0-1. So those goose eggs do do weigh us down just a little bit, but yeah, in terms of across the board, it's a little bleak to be completely honest. The winning records are a little bit challenging to find. It's literally just Whack Hyder at 2-0 for any coach that's faced them more than one time. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's some research. I applaud you. Yeah.
Jake has built the database that spits out whatever you want really quickly if you know your parameters. It's kind of
Wow.
Actually,
it's a miraculous invention. It's not.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
He's done the Lord's work here for our purposes. Ken, you're welcome to stick around for more, but otherwise, really happy that we got the chance to chat.
Yeah.
We're gonna do what we're doing. We're doing softball's next. All right. Oh, this is a good
Okay.
topic to talk about.
Well,
so.
I do like chatting with you guys. I don't know I have a lot to add. So for your sake and mine, perhaps let's call it a night. But thank you guys. I love talking, visiting with you guys and talking Georgia Tech. So thanks for having me on.
So thankful we got to get to talk.
Great to have you, sir.
Likewise. Yeah. All right. I'll see you guys.
All right. See you.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right, so softball. We had 4 games this week. We played Mercer in the midweek, and then we had Pitt at home. And Pitt, Mercer somehow was the hardest game of all of this. It was just
Jack. I'm not gonna lie. That game had me real concerned.
It was concerned. It was only a 6-5 win. I put in parentheses weird game because it just had the bits that I watched. It just kind of had some weird vibes. It's just like Mercer's pitching wasn't terrible that day. Like they were painting corners pretty well. It wasn't like we were getting meatballs to hit and stuff like that. It's just one of those off. It happens when you play 50 games a year. You're gonna have a weird one here and there. That just had that vibe, but they got it done. They won the weird one.
Yeah,
which that's not nothing. That was a game last year that was absolutely no guarantee. Like Alabama A&M was that black spot last year where it just couldn't pull out the midweek game. Then Pitt, we mercy ruled every time. 14-5 and 5 in the first game, 10-1 in 6 innings in the second game, and then today beat them 8-0. All of them were walk-off mercy rules. All 3 of them. Really fun. So that was delightful. The offense still hitting bombs. Madison Dobbins had a grand slam in the first game against Pitt. She had 2 homers in that game. Her and Mallory Black both have 8 now on the season. We were leading the country in home runs into this weekend, but the thing is Miami of Ohio hit 12 this weekend.
Holy moly!
And they
also play.
They had a tournament. They had like a round. They had one of those round robin tournament things. They played Oklahoma and didn't
they
win.
played Oklahoma last year too. There must be some connection there.
They played a lot of not great teams after that, though. So that's kind of how that pulled off. So they're at 58. We're at 44. But we still hit like 7 this week. So it's not like we had a bad weekend of homers. It's just that Miami of Ohio explicitly hit homers all weekend against, and they had more games. They had midweek and weekend game. Well, they had the same number of games. I don't know. That's just how that went down. So after our extremely high level run of homers and everything, they are still on track for some incredible numbers throughout the season. Abby Hughes had a dinger. Tiffany Doming. I've learned it's not Deming. It reads like Deming, but it's Doming, as I've been told. She had a couple bombs. She seems to have solidified the second base job at this point too, which is good to see. It's pretty consistent 1 through 9 across the board. Emma McGinney and Abby Hughes split time at first base. Blake Nelman had 1 rough inning against Pitt in that first game. That's where Pitt got their 5 runs, but she looked pretty good. Besides that, she just got teed off on a couple times, like some really hard hit homers. Mackenzie Norton cleared up that game. I wrote in here that I guess this is for us to talk about. Sophia Voiles seems to be the number 1 starter right now, but they're really doing this pitch by committee thing like all the way. Like either any pitcher will do the back half or the front half of a game. They're willing to go both ways for everybody. So, Jake, do you have any notable thoughts on just like the whole pitching situation right now at all?
Can I say something really random?
Sure.
Miami of Ohio plays Jacksonville State this weekend, which is also the next team we play.
Oh my goodness. We have to put a lot of runs up on this team.
I don't have a lot of ways to go with that, but I just feel like that's weird. And then in their very next game, they play UGA because they're in Athens for this tournament, which is also our midweek opponent the week after that.
We're gonna have Are we having a
I just
proxy battle with Miami of Ohio? Is this a
yes,
proxy game? We have to.
yeah.
Oh, this is so funny. A
I,
transitive.
I will give I will give their show against Louisiana some props. Louisiana has not the greatest record this year, but did defeat number one Oklahoma today, and I believe has hosted a regional in the last 2 or 3 years. So
Louisiana broke. Yes, they broke Oklahoma's 71 game winning streak. 71 games in a row. Oklahoma Sooners softball had one that was broken
yeah,
by Louisiana. So that's incredible stuff. Really good for them. On the same, it was a historic college sports day between that and Caitlin Clark.
I was gonna say, and between those random comments, which are now out there, and you can take that Jacksonville State and Georgia information and do with it what you please. I will say Georgia Tech needed to win, to sweep, to dominate this series. You do not get a lot of series against the Pitts of the world. And I say this with no ill will in my heart towards the Panthers. They have been consistently towards the bottom of the ACC standings, and that Georgia Tech needed to rack up 3 wins. And they understood the assignment, I think, is the fairest way to do it. They've never had a run rule sweep of any opponent in ACC play in the 30 plus, almost 35 years that ACC softball as a sport has existed.
Well, there you go. And this was
They understood the assignment.
This was definitely the team to do it against because they're when I got the lineup sheets, I was looking at the averages and it was like, oh, this is not the same. They got a lot of 100 average hitters on that Pitt team, so it was about time. Some of them got their first homers, which I guess they had a lot of traveling folks, so I'm glad for the families that gave that they got to see at least some good moments for them while they made all the travel, but we still beat them pretty badly. Yeah. So I think that's good to see. As we mentioned, Jacksonville State in the proxy battle against Miami of Ohio, as we're now calling it, and then we're going to North Carolina State this weekend. On the website, though, Maggie Scroggs, who, if you remember, she was writing our Things I Think I Know series during football season, she's gonna take up the mantle for some softball recaps this season. So look out for her recap on that. All right, that was a fun 45 minutes. Let's take a little break here, Jake.
Yeah, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103 is the best place to find all sorts of great Georgia Tech stuff. Tonight, I'm actually wearing my Bobby Dodd Stadium is my happy place shirt. Consider this my follow-up to yesterday's Welcome to the Thriller Dome shirt, as I am a sucker for Georgia Tech venue themed shirts. And there is a great place to find it on section103.com. Welcome to the Thriller Dome in gold does have Buzz spinning a basketball. Again, I am also a sucker for Buzz doing things that are not just standing there. Great work all around. As always, use the code FTRS, 10% off at section103.com, section 103 on Twitter. Tell them we sent you, and we do appreciate your support of this fine podcast and that fine website and organization as well.
Merely 10 seconds ago, the third game of the Georgia series went final against baseball, at least according to my stat broadcast. It didn't actually conclude the series against Georgia because we technically haven't ever finished game one. So talking about baseball, they had 4 games this week. They played Georgia State midweek, won 10-0. And then Jake and I were both at game one against Georgia, which was the game at Rush Chandler at McNeese Park. That game started in the rain, continued in the rain, and finished in the heaviest of rains, but not the heaviest, but heavier rain by the 5th inning. That game should never have started, but they had to start it because each game takes place at a different ballpark in the UGA series, so they kind of had to play what they could. And so, as of now, that game is a 9-3 game in the bottom of the 5th inning. So we'll find out if they ever finish that game. The idea is they're going to come back to Rush Chandler later in the season if they have an open date and do that. But we just lost game 3 and we lost game 2. So, Jake, this is the first real test baseball had in terms of like full series against a team that's definitely quality. And we did not get the nail biting wins. Unlike softball, where we saw the nail biter and they got through it, this team did not get through that. Despite the fact Drew Burress has 10 homers right now and had his 4-homer game like a madman against Georgia State, that feels overshadowed now by the fact that this team just could not get over this hump.
Yeah, I don't know. I went into the series pretty confident. Friday, I think you can basically toss out there. Obviously both teams were playing in the rain. There were definitely 2 innings of those, I guess 4 or 5 that UGA was able to bat in. I would say much much stronger rain than we were.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like they couldn't grip baseballs.
Well,
It was bad.
I can see how some, but basically it's like it's just a lame excuse. But I saw Ben King out there. He had no control of any pitches he was throwing. Like he threw
Yeah.
4 wild pitches. So it definitely came at in between that inning where he came in. It came down harder. So it's such a weird. I talk about weird game like that. You just very unpredictable when you get in conditions like that.
Well, and that's the thing too, is Cam Hill looked pretty good in the first. He
was
sat
amazing.
everyone
Yeah.
up, everyone
Yeah.
down. Charlie Condon looked silly up
did.
against him. And then the rain really, really started to pick up, I'd say, even in the bottom of the first. Back-to-back Tech batters got plunked, but I don't think you're out there trying to bean guys in a rainstorm in the first inning of a weekend series. Like that's silly.
Yep.
I will say, you're going to look at that score when and if this game ever resumes, it's going to be 9-3. Georgia did get 2 very timely 3-run home runs with 2 outs in back-to-back innings. But hey, that's how you win ball games, or you win by not giving those hits up, right? They were barreling up Georgia Tech in a way that we didn't really see Saturday. Kind of moving to the Saturday game, it was a 3-1 game. Tech went, I believe, 0 for 11, maybe 0 for 12, with runners in scoring positions, and electric offense that just could not get a hit when it counted, and you pay the price for it. And then, I mean, do we have to talk about today's game? Tech led 9-3. There's that score again.
Ironic,
and
yes.
wound up losing 11-9, bleeding away runs. And
Badly.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like it's the same thing we've seen for as long as I've been following this baseball team. And it's you have one great run in the last 7-ish years, but if this keeps up, I don't know, Jack.
I know, I agree. Logan McGuire threw 5. He only allowed 2 earned runs. Like he had a great outing.
That's great start.
Fantastic on 90 pitches, 54 strikes. Like absolutely fantastic. All you could ask for from Logan.
Finateri had a great start yesterday too.
And Finateri was great. Like our starting pitch, I think at least our starting pitching is at least over these games so far, definitely feels to be in a much better place than it was last year. Between Finateri, McGuire, just even being available was not a thing we had last year, and we get that back, which is great. And then, Cameron Hill, when he's on, holy crap, is he on? Like he's got some wicked pitches to get some guys out with. So like it's there. There are guys to get us innings, but we can't be throwing 7 guys in a game, or 7 guys in a game like we did today and allow 11 runs. Like that's just inexcusable, especially when you have a 6-run cushion. Like, come on, guys. That's not great. We allowed 8 runs in the last 3 innings of this game. That's how you lose games. That's just how that happens. So that sucks a lot.
And I do want to grab one stat that I was thinking of. Oh yeah, 11 left on base today. Not great. That's up there with the RISP. Yeah, Tech scored 9 runs, but that's leaving a lot of folks on. There's a couple innings where it's like, there's 2-3 on. Really wish we could have gotten one more there. And of course, when you're up by 6, it's a little bit like asking for more than you're allowed. But
right.
I mean, pretty bleak way to lose to your rivals. A no contest game, which was called about 3 outs before it would have been considered official.
So
I'm sure
the big thing there. Right. Yeah, it was that. Georgia's manager Wes was not happy about the fact that the umpires called the game in the bottom of the 5th when we still they had to get through our hitting order to make it official, but the puddling was absolutely visible in the infield by the time that half inning rolled around. Like it was that field was not playable at that point. So as weird as conspiratorial as you want to be about it, the actual field conditions had reached the state of no return without some serious work that was going to take hours and hours to fix. And the rain was just
bad.
The rain was just not stopping. Like it was a hard rain for 2 innings there. Like I don't know how, if it wasn't this very particular series, that game was never happening on Friday. Like softball moved their Friday game to Saturday because there was just no reason to play. But the nature
I got
of
home and I
this.
took a long hot shower, and I hope everyone else did too, because that was like pneumonia setting in levels of rain, wetness, cold exposure.
It
You
was
like
terrible.
that?
It was terrible, absolutely
Yeah.
terrible.
Though I will say the food truck that they had there with the cheesesteaks was pretty good.
All
So
right,
good
that's
job,
good.
athletics.
All right, there we go. That's good.
Is that my positive for the week? Who's to
Sure.
say?
Well, okay.
And honestly, going into Athens and only giving up 3 runs, I got to commend the pitching for that. But oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
yeah.
what a flip side of the coin today. It's really like we watched three very different games and settings. I feel
Yes,
like,
I
and
agree.
three very frustrating, but
Yes.
still still frustrating, very different setups. Is that how I
Um,
leave it?
I glossed over the Drew Burress part too quickly. This is the story of the week. That really in Tech Nation is that he had his 4-homer game against Georgia State. He's the first ever to have a 4-homer game in the history of Georgia Tech baseball, which dates back to John Heisman and all those guys. So that
Yeah.
just absolutely incredible stuff. I was so mad. I saw the first one, waited for a second at bat before going to my sister's birthday dinner. Went to it, came back. He had 4 homers. Just missed the last three entirely because I was off. I just happened to be the wrong part of time where I was off Twitter or just not watching the game. So and he hit a homer in that first Georgia game, and because it is suspended and not canceled, that homer still counts. His 10th homer is technically still available, but if they do not count that homer, or if the game doesn't ever finish, he will lose a homer on his season total, which I believe is still nation leading at 10. So he's at 10 for now. There was always going to be so I mean, part of me just hopes I hope they finish that game. Odds are yes, we probably lose, but you never know. But also just in
Well,
case, like
if they restart it, you're gonna play through to 9 if the weather's decent. It's not like they'd be like, "Yep, we got
no,
our 3 outs this beautiful sunny
no,
day."
they're gonna keep playing. Yes, that's the thing. So if they get back to this game, they're going to continue at that game state, where they left off the game. That means that in that game, Ben King and Cameron Hill cannot pitch that game because they were already burned that in that game. All the
Mhm.
position players are still available though. They did not. No one was subbed out in those first 4.5 innings. So all but two of our most important pitchers are available for that game. Uh, but so theoretically, we could just have a starter go innings 6 through 9. If it works out, you never know. So we'll see how that plays out. Charles Gilly, our photographer and baseball guy extraordinaire, will be doing a recap of games 2 and 3. That'll be up on the site, I believe, on Monday. So look out for that. Men's tennis, they had a good win. They lost to North Carolina, but they beat the number 13 team in the country, and Chris Aurora got ACC Freshman of the Week. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. I mean, that's that's the kind of win that we've been hypothesizing was very possible for this team for a long time, and it
Yep.
feels like they came pretty close earlier in some of the non-con items. We don't want to talk about that school any more than we already have.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, number 13. I mean, this is a team that hasn't been to the postseason in a couple of seasons, but seems to have the talent to make it back. And a quality win on the road,
It's
man,
huge.
you
That's
can't do
huge.
much better than that to put yourself in a good spot for it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Any team in North Carolina in tennis is usually a bad mix for Georgia Tech, just in general. And the fact we got one of the teams ranked and got them on the road is fantastic. They're 10-3 right now. Those were the first two conference matches they had. They're undefeated at home still, and that was their first road
Jack, I
win.
have an
Yeah,
update.
got an
Duke
update.
was actually number 11 because
Oh, even
the
better.
the rankings came out midweek since we updated our shot sheet last
Oh
week.
no, oh no, there we go. Okay, number 11. Well, is Wake Forest still number 3 because that is our next team?
Wake Forest is number 3. I added that one today, so
Okay, there we go.
I'm
All right.
I'm confident in that one being up there.
Gotcha. All right. We don't have specific results of these matches because those were not posted, sadly. But in a 6-1, odds are we lost. Odds are it was a singles match we lost if I had to guess because our doubles has been pretty good.
Also, there are 6 singles matches and 1 doubles point, so you're really playing the odds there in a way
Uh,
that I think is the smart call.
thank you. Thank you. I
Yes,
know
you're
some.
welcome.
I know some numbers
This is
most
a
of the time.
self-congratulatory podcast at its very heart.
All right. Wake. So yeah, we this next week, Friday and Sunday, we play at Wake Forest and then at North Carolina State, and that will finish our North Carolina run until ACC championships. The women.
Good.
I know. Don't want to go there anymore.
Goodbye. Good riddance.
I don't want to go
So
there anymore
long.
than we have to.
Yeah,
They're not
exactly.
back at Ken Byers until the Wednesday, March 19 against Clemson. On to the women. They had a 5-2 loss at number 5 UVA. Understandable, hard one. ACC road stuff, yada yada yada. They beat
That
Virginia
was
Tech.
ACC home stuff.
Well, even worse.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's not great. They were number 5 in the country. We're not. And then they beat Virginia Tech today 4-3 in a very close match that I was scoreboard watching. We lost the doubles point, had won 3 singles matches, and then Alejandra Cruz lost her tiebreak in the second set to close out the match. And then while she was playing her third set, Virginia Tech won 2 other singles matches, leaving it to Alejandra to either win or lose the match. And she won it. She won her third set 6-2 to give us a 4-3 win over the Hokies.
Yeah, that's a team you need to beat.
Yeah.
Straight up. That's my feedback.
Perfect. Okay, that's all. There's not that much to go on there. That was the main match to really focus on. They are now 7-5. Granted, a number of these losses have come against some pretty good teams. So it's a not a quality 5 loss. Is it a quality 5 losses? Would you say
I'd say reasonable quality. They're ranked number 31 right now. I don't think that'll change too much. Number 31 puts you squarely as like a 3 seed in the tournament if you keep it up. And I'd say not every team is number 5 in the country, but they get the number 4 team in the country and the number 18 team in the country on the road next week. If they can win one of those two, like getting another Duke tennis win, I think that's something that'll really bolster where they're at. But the ACC tennis slate is a grind.
Did you have our men's basketball team and men's tennis team being the ones to beat Duke this year?
Not particularly, their baseball's looking pretty spooky this year too, to be honest. But
oh dear,
we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it, I suppose.
Indeed. All right, yeah. So women's tennis, they got 2 matches as we mentioned against North Carolina and Duke, both in North Carolina. So those will be fun. Hopefully, be nice if they won that. Swim and dive, they had their last chance Bulldog meet in Athens. There were no new NCAA cuts made by any of our swimmers. So basically, it's that men's relay is our NCAA team this year that got the A cut at the ACC championships. The next meet is going to be diving zones. And our diving has been actually half decent this year. So that
weirdly, the website was updated to say it's Auburn's last chance meet, March 1st and March 2nd.
They definitely.
I don't know what to believe anymore.
I thought
because
they went to Georgia.
It said Georgia last week when we were talking about it because we talked about this.
Hold on, let's see if I can recognize it from the.
I feel lied to be honest.
Okay. Man, okay. I can't tell from this picture where they went. Both of us have swam in Auburn and Georgia's pools.
Oh, hold on. The picture on the website?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
The picture on the website's at Tech.
Oh, that's even worse.
Those are Tech's lane lines. That's Tech's pool deck. I'm confident in that.
Okay. Oh, I see it now. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Well, they went somewhere in the SEC and didn't qualify for any more swimmers for NCAAs. I guess the only things I'll mention: Mackenzie Campbell won her 400 IM in a 4:15.54, and then Anna Hadjiloizu got a 22.34 in the 50 free. She won that event as well. And then Zora Rivkova got 3rd in the 100 fly. Lastly, Club Lacrosse, they had 2 wins. They're number 2 in the country still. They had, what does the RV and RV New Hampshire stand for?
Received votes.
Oh, okay. There you go. Received votes, New Hampshire. And then they hosted Texas A&M at the SAC Fields today. Any big things here? They won pretty handedly, it seemed.
Yeah. Both of them were pretty handily. They were both at home. I mean, they're the number 2 team in the country. They're very spooky for their opponents. These are 2 teams you had to beat. And I mean, from all indications, it seems like that very much was the case. The box score isn't up quite yet for the A&M game, but in terms of against New Hampshire, really just a solid performance overall. I mean, if you're only allowing 3 goals in 3 goals in lacrosse, that's a pretty good day.
Lacrosse guy, but I know that's good.
Yeah, exactly. And our starting goalie was Peter Zagrobelny. I hope I put the emphasis on the right places there. But he of note was 14 of 15 saves versus shots. So really, really great to see. And just a really solid day. Scoring spread around. That's a pretty quality team. And one that I think I don't know. Georgia Tech hasn't really gone too far away yet this year. They played a lot of games at home or in the near regions, I guess, of the Southeast here. They'll head out on the road, and I think we'll see a lot more interesting folks out on the road. They play Texas, who's number 10 in the country at a neutral site, as well as Cal, who's number 15. I assume at their place in Berkeley, given that it says at, even though the Texas one isn't at Berkeley, it's a whole thing. But yeah, top 10, top 15 matchups coming up, so it should be time to really see what they're made of.
Okay. Last news and notes that I forgot to put on the sheet. The men's basketball schedule came out for the next season, and then the women's schedules came out for the next 2 seasons. Tech will not be going to Cal and Cal and Stanford next year on the men's side. They will be going to SMU. They preserved Clemson. Who else was their main opponent? Their home and homes. It was Clemson, someone else, and someone else.
They remain in home and homes with Notre Dame and Clemson as they have for years and years and years. They get Boston College home and away as the other, which if this year's any indication, you get a quality opponent in Clemson and winnable games Notre Dame and BC. So I'm pretty pleased to see that.
Yeah, so one would have to imagine based on the women's schedule, which we are going to Cal and Stanford to start in 2024, 2025, and then flipping the script in 25, 26. Probably they'll do the same for the men's team, assuming no other crazy changes. So that's where we're at now. I guess I think the fun part is that North Carolina State got Cal as a home and away team, and then who is the other one that got a rough one? Oh, who was it? Virginia got SMU as a home and away, and then Wake Forest got Stanford as a home and away for men's basketball.
Somebody's got to get them, I suppose. we took the bullet in football, not getting any protected matchups. You know?
No, it was that's definitely the case. Who is the only unlucky team here real unlucky team is Syracuse, who has to go to all 3 of the new teams that next season. So I guess someone had to go to all 3, and it's gonna be them. Just those poor guys got to fly from the top right of the country to the bottom left of the country for those games. So, but the idea though is that every the original 15, the main body 15 ACC teams will only make one trip in the next 2 years, at least on the women's side, to California. So theoretically, the guys will have the same thing as well. So that's the first instance we have seen of ACC teams scheduled next season, or at least the soonest occurrence of going out there. We'll see the volleyball schedule eventually, and that will actually be the first games that we'll see against Stanford or Cal or SMU in those sports. And then lastly, on our website from therumbleseat.com, as I mentioned, I have our recaps. I've got my Ramblin' to Paris series coming up. I'm hoping to have one more interview up in the next couple weeks or so with one of our old swimmers who made the Olympics in the past, and then we'll do some more fun Olympic data stuff. But with that, I think we have done everything. Actually, I would say Akshay missed out, but he's like probably in not the happiest place, not his Disneyland, but kind of his Disneyland. I don't know.
I think he might hate us for saying that, but I also think it's true. So
he's not here to defend himself. Sorry, dude. But all right, take us home, Jake.
Yeah. As always, this has been Scions of the Southland. We are incredibly pleased to have you along for the adventure. As always, thanks to Ken for joining us and for chatting. It was always a pleasure to have him. In the meantime, you can find us at FromTheRumbleSeat.com. As noted, you can email us from TheRumbleSeat@gmail.com. We're always taking comments, suggestions, topics that you are interested in. We want to make sure that we're talking about things that matter to you. You can find us on Twitter at FTRS blog as well. I'm at JakeGrant98. Jack is at Jack Nicholas. You can find Section 103 there as well at Section 103 and Section103.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at From the Rumble Seat and this podcast, wherever fine podcasts are sold. In the meantime, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.